Out of the 9 kids for Dad's farm, and then Grandma and Grandpa had 4. We're the only ones left farming.
Hey everyone, it's Sarah here in Johnson, Minnesota, filming the Gillespie Family Farm story. Many of you may recognize that name through the Steffes organization, but what you may not know is what they do behind the scenes. And today, we're gonna come along and show you what they do.
Hi, I'm Colby Gillespie.
Hi, I'm Brady Gillespie.
I'm Marilyn Gillespie. I am Curtis and Scott's mother.
Hi, I'm Kurt Gillespie.
Hi, I'm Scott Gillespie. Nice to meet you. I'm a part of Gillespie Family Farms, Johnson, Minnesota.
My mom and dad moved back here from Milwaukee in 1940. When they moved back, he was teaching school and farming on the side. All those years he was farming across the road, and when he was getting ready to retire, they were going to have my brother, Milton, help him farm. Well, he was married in December and was killed in a tractor accident in April.
In April, I believe it was, of that year, my uncle, who I never met, Milton, was killed in a tractor accident. He was scraping mud off the road after pulling out on the road, and Grandpa Barch always taught them to, you clean up after yourself and you don't leave a mess and you do things the right way. And he took that John Deere with a narrow front and the loader and went to scrape it off the road, and somehow or another tipped it over in the ditch, and it pinned him and killed him. At that point, I know my grandma and grandpa were devastated, and I never want to know how that feels.
And so then Paul and I were going together at the time, and we were engaged, and so they asked, would you be interested in helping Dad farm? And he said yes, because he always wanted to farm. He had gotten out of the service and was working for a carpenter crew, and he always wanted to farm. So he said, absolutely, we would be happy to. So they sold us this land right across the road, and being a carpenter, we built the house, and we were married in 1963, and we started building the house then in 63 and finished it in 65. After we were married and had the house built, they farmed together for then until my dad died. And Paul kept farming, and then as the boys got old enough, they started helping in the farm.
And so yeah, 1963 is when Mom and Dad started working this dirt that we're sitting on today. My dad was a helper. He always was. He was a worker.
My dad had us fully employed. When we were growing up, we had 100 baby calves here every 6 weeks. We had 600 head of cattle and 600 head of hogs on the place, and that in the 80s, that kind of changed things for our family completely.
In the 80s, we started raising baby calves. When we moved on to this farm, we would get them at about 10 days old, and we had a calf barn that we would get 100 at a time. We had to bottle feed all of them. The cattle market started going down and down and down.
I'll never forget Dad saying, in about 1985, he said, boys, cattle are a luxury we can no longer afford.
We lost the farm and basically could have declared bankruptcy, but Paul said no. No bankruptcy, we were just gonna fight through it. So we did. So we were in the cities one day and talking to the banker, and he said, I'm going to sell the rest of my cattle because we're just going farther and farther under all the time. And the banker said, you can't do that. They'll go up again. And he said, watch me. He said, come to the farm on Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. The trucks are gonna be in the yard. And they were, and sold the rest of the cattle.
He refinanced things. The piece of land that we're sitting on right now, he gave that back to the bank, and he gave them a whole bunch more. And he bought this home quarter back, and 2 years before he passed away, he got it paid for the second time. And to do that when he was at his age, to start over, intestinal fortitude that took. I don't know that we'll ever really understand that. We've never had to do what he did.
That was basically how we stayed on the farm all of these years, and then the boys took over. We built this farm up from bare land to what it is today.
And when I said Johnson, Minnesota. Many of you probably had no idea where that is, and that's because you are not part of that 29 people who live here.
The legacy thing means something to us too. Not every day is fun. We try to make every day fun. And I specifically remember one day when there was pigs that fell in a pit, a manure pit. The manure pit was only about 3 feet deep and there was only a foot of manure. There was only one hole you could get them out of. And so I was in on my hands and knees in my underwear, chasing the pigs, grabbing them by the leg, hauling them back. I didn't know any better. That day in particular, I specifically remember that wasn't, that is not what dreams are made of, you know?
That was not a glamorous day.
I'll be honest with you, personally, the 27th of November 1992, I had an auger fall on my head and it broke my neck and I shattered C1. And I fractured C2 and C3 and I cracked C4 and C5 and I laid across the road for 45 minutes. And I think him and Dad maybe thought I wasn't gonna make it, I don't know. But I sat up in Fargo in the hospital and the surgeon told me, he said, young man, he said, out of all the people that break the bones that you did, 95% of it never make it to the hospital alive, and another 5%, 4% never walk again. And here I am. And I try to remind myself of that God has a plan for me. Well, generally, we run equipment that the bank owns, that they let us use on a year-to-year basis as we continue paying them.
When we started farming, we had a pretty tough line of equipment. It was pretty tough shape.
Full disclosure, Dad bought it back when it was kind of wore out.
Yeah.
Because we had to give it all to the bank in the 80s, and then we had to buy it back from them in order to continue on. And so instead of replacing equipment, we were purchasing it for the second time.
And then the repair bills got out of hand and stuff, and then we started buying a little bit of equipment and we updated, and then when Scott and I tried to expand and stuff, then we updated a little more.
And half the stuff on our farm we bought on auction sales.
Yeah, maybe more than half. We're not buyers of new stuff. We're kind of value shoppers, you know, looking for a deal. Like most,
Found something better than cheap.
Yeah, most farmers, I think, are value shoppers, and that's why auction sales are really good. Most farmers like them because they believe that they are getting a good value for their money.
I respect those guys who buy that new equipment, because if they don't buy it new, we can't buy it used.
All four of the children had to be getting up by 5:30, 6 o'clock every morning, school or no school, year-round, to help with the baby calves. And we weren't always too popular with them, but it worked out fine, gave them a good work ethic. They know what work is like on the farm.
We were kind of raised, we had a side hustle our whole life. When we were in high school and tech school and college, we shingled barns for a living. We didn't know that we were underbidding everybody by a pile. We just weren't making a lot of money, but we were sure busy all the time. Then Scott was in the custom spraying business. I built cabinets by nights and weekends. I was in the limousine business for 11 years. We owned a farm tile company with two other brothers for 11 years. So we've had a side hustle our entire life. That kind of helped make the farm successful. And that's kind of, you know, I don't regret any of it.
And you know, we kind of all work as a team here. Like nobody's on their own. So like if somebody's involved in one thing, everybody else is kind of in it too, to a certain extent. The tiling business, I worked there all summer when I was in high school. Bought my first pickup with cash because of it. So if one person gets into something, we kind of all are usually get into it, either succeed or not succeed with it.
In February of 2008, my nephew Brady went down to the Worldwide College of Auctioneering in Mason City, Iowa.
I was 13 in 2008, and we loaded up and went to auction school because he just kind of put a bug in the ear, and it's just something we figured he'd try out. We
completed that program, and this goes back to this life is about people thing. We graduated, and by God, we were auctioneers. I mean, rah, rah.
At auction school, we met Eric Gabrielson just at Dairy Queen one day, sat down with him, and one thing led to another. They asked us to come help at an auction sale in 2008, and nobody's asked me to leave yet.
Eric called us up the next week and he says, hey, you guys got to come down and you're going to help us at Ag Iron in Litchfield. And it's kind of like, yeah, boom, we're freaking auctioneers, we're going to go, you know. So Brady and I drove down there, and he worked driving equipment, and I was a ring man in Ring 2. Even at that time, I was kind of new to that whole deal, but even at that time, I knew the difference between a good ring man and a bad ring man. I was a really bad ring man. So luckily, Scott Steffes was the auctioneer in that ring. And he knew I was bad, and I knew I was bad. I was always in the wrong spot, screwing everything up, tie bids, you name it, you know. And this was a frickin' train wreck. Got done with the sale, and we're sitting in the back office, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, this auction career was fun. It was very short, but it was fun, you know, did it. I mean, and he looked at me and he says, good job out there today. I immediately turned and looked behind me to see who the heck he was talking to, because I was there and he was there, and we both know that I did not do a good job. You build people up, you don't tear them down. He said, why don't you come up to Fargo next week and help there? It's kind of like, you are really hard up for workers, evidently, is what I was thinking. And again, that was in March of 2008. It kind of escalated out of control since then.
In 2014, my daughter Brooke wanted to go to auction school. Paul C. Bear, co-owner of Worldwide College Auctioneering, him and Miss Vicky, invited me to come with Brooke on a week-long get out of your shell program at Worldwide College of Auctioneering. So Brooke and I, in February of 2014, we attended Worldwide College of Auctioneering in Mason City, Iowa. We both graduated with the same attitude, you know, we're auctioneers now. And Brooke, in I think July of that year, decided to compete in the International Junior Auctioneers Championship. So we chased that ball around for a while, and in 2016 she won the International Junior Auctioneers Championship, and then she went to college and got a full-time job working in the advertising department at Steffes. So it's kind of been a family affair, and it's turned into more of an adventure than what we ever expected it to be, because if we didn't like it, we wouldn't be doing it. We work around great people, and our clients are some of the best in the industry. We enjoy what we do. We get up in the morning every day, and we have something different to do. We don't lead a boring life. We have something different to do every day, and I think we're really fortunate to have that kind of opportunity. And a lot of people have given us that opportunity, and we don't take that lightly.
What cemented us getting out of the cattle business? In the winter of 2009, like everything else, snow was deep, wet, and heavy, and got up one morning, and the majority of the barn
collapsed overnight.
Yeah. So we were sitting here. Somebody came in to the shop, and our father was here. We were standing around. Actually, I think we were fairly busy doing something. Dad always had time to talk to everybody. That person said, when are you going to have your shop warming party? I kind of looked at Kurt, and it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, too busy, this and that. And our dad looked at us and he said, in 1973, the cattle barn that he built with his own two hands, the one that fell down that was under this same dirt, he had a shop warming party for that, or a barn warming party for that. And they cooked a half a steer and 2 hogs and a whole bunch of beer, and there was, what did he say, 700 people showed up? And he said, you guys are having a shop warming party. And then it started escalating out of control, partially because of him, and now I'll let you take over.
When I was in the limousine business, I got to be good personal friends with the Bellamy brothers. And he goes, well, we'd like to perform. And I said, well, we can't afford you. And he said, you haven't asked us yet. You don't know if you can afford us. So that's how it started. All of a sudden, we had the Bellamy brothers hired to come here, and that escalated out of control. And pretty soon, we had 1,500 people here for a shed party. And then we tried to duplicate it in 2000. That was in 2013. Tried to duplicate that in 2016, and that ended up being about 3,500 people on the premises. And our community behind us is very instrumental in the way this farm runs too. I think we're very fortunate to live in the community we do.
We've been involved in the auction business for a long time. We as either buyers or sellers, so we couldn't let a good opportunity with a whole bunch of people who wanted to give go by without asking them. And so in 2013, we asked some people to donate some things. We raised, if I remember right, about $14,000 the first year. It just happened to be when the first responders were looking to buy a different ambulance. And we donated all the proceeds of that. And then the second one in 2016, I don't know, we had 25 items or something we did. And we were selling coolers full of Keystone Light for $2,000. And we donated all the money to Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. $24,000 or something, and it all stayed locally Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, which supports veterans and their families. Little factoid to that party though, that is we had the local fire department pour beer. There was no charge for it. We weren't selling anything. I don't know, 6 hours or something, they poured beer and we gave it all away, and then the tips all went to the fire department. It was right on 100 gallons an hour they were serving.
Our local gravel company right west of here, Simpson Gravel, they donated a load of sand, and we put $1,000 in change. We dumped $1,000 in change and mixed it in a truckload of sand.
There is still minivans out there that I know have sand in the seats from their kids when they crawled back in there at night, because they were covered in sand. It was great. 2013 was when we had that first party. Our dad has had some health problems. He had his first major heart attack when he was 2 years younger than I am now. That was another reason why we most certainly don't regret that, because it almost turned into a going away party for him. He passed away in beginning of December that year because he loved doing that. He died with his boots on, so to speak. Why do I love farming? It's the family thing. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's, I still feel my dad with me once in a while.
Half of the deal out here is our legacy is our kids. The farm was a great place to grow up. For me, for my kids, my nieces and nephews loved to come to the farm every year because it was a good, wholesome, solid, have fun place. It's the place to be when you're a kid.
My cousins coming up every summer, they'd come up and visit Grandma and Grandpa, and then we would just play hide and go seek around the farm with walkie-talkies and just different things like that. And
you know, we're building the farm all the time, but we're building it for somebody else too. We're building it for another generation or two. The real good, strong farms out there, they weren't built in one generation. It takes real work to hold that together. It really does. It's about everybody. So that's kind of what I value most about the farm. I guess the thing that I'm most excited for is the stuff that Scott and I have built, they don't have to rebuild. This shop, we hope, is here for 2 or 3 generations. They don't have to. It was our blood, sweat, and tears that built this building, but you know, my dad started building on it. We continued building on it. A lot of the stuff, our kids and grandkids shouldn't have to build some of the infrastructure, and they should be able to focus on other things, hopefully.
I know Paul hoped the same thing, that for as much work as we did to get it started, that it will continue with someone who is interested and who is able to keep it going.
I think I'm most looking forward to on the farm, just expanding it, keeping it sustainable for future generation before me have done that, so I can be in the position I'm in, and I would like to do that for anybody past me, I guess. I have no intention of this farm ending with me, so I need to just do whatever is in my power, adopt technology if that's what it need be to pay, you know, justify it, or look at any avenue that we can do to make this farm successful for another generation.
Thank you goes out to the Gillespie family for letting us hear their story. We are so grateful. As always, if you are new here, thanks for joining us. If you have been here along the journey, thanks for joining us as well. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. If you have a story that you would love to have us come out and film, email us at steffesspotlight@steffesgroup.com. For a list of upcoming auctions, visit steffesgroup.com.